Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. This is our third session in American English Live Series 16. We're so excited that each of you are here with us today. My name is Kate, and I'll be with you today along with my colleague behind the scenes, Elena, who will be the moderator helping answer your questions and responding to your comments during today's session. Let's begin today with these wonderful audience comments from our most recent webinar, Save the Planet and Cultural Traditions While Teaching English, with Melissa Hauke. So from Arayuna in Mongolia, this session shared very engaging activities that promote environmental awareness among students. Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful comment. Abdullahi in Senegal wrote, great ideas developed on how to better take care of the planet. Fortunately, there are plenty of actions we can all take. Thank you for reminding us that action can also start from the classroom. And Clarissa in Honduras wrote, wow, it is so important to link and consider environmental education topics in English classes. Students will love it. But most importantly, we are going to have a better world. Wonderful. We love to see our teacher participants actively engaged in professional development, so please continue to share your thoughts about our webinars by offering your feedback through the end of session quiz form or by emailing them to americanenglishwebinars@fhi360.org. We may feature one of your comments during the next session. Throughout Series 16, we are exploring the themes of teaching about climate change in the EFL classroom and approaches for teaching a variety of core ELT topics. We hope you are able to use the practical ideas we share. Are you eagerly awaiting one of these sessions? Let us know in the chat. So here's what to expect today. The session is about 60 minutes long. The presenter will present the material, and I, as your host, will ask questions and make comments too. But we really hope to hear from you, our audience, so that we can address your ideas and experiences. Please share your thoughts using the comments feature or chat box. And when our session comes to a close, you will have an opportunity to receive a digital badge for your participation. At the end of the webinar, we'll share a link in the comments. Click on that link and complete a short quiz about today's session. You must answer 2 out of 3 multiple choice questions correctly. And once you've successfully passed the quiz, you can expect to get your badge via email within about a week. And before we begin, we want to invite you to enjoy the latest online edition of English Teaching Forum, the last of 4 issues celebrating 60 years of Forum. You'll find strategies for using questionnaires to generate learner-created knowledge, for working within language teacher associations, for using art to prompt discussions, for turning a local logic grid puzzle into a communicative activity, and much more. You can access this exciting issue via the link being shared by the moderator now. And now for today's webinar, Promoting Authentic Language Use with Tasks. With 1.5 billion English speakers in the world, the status of English as a lingua franca is widely recognized. A primary goal of many English learners is to be able to communicate internationally as global citizens. However, among the different language skills, speaking is difficult to master, especially when there's generally a lack of opportunities for authentic communication inside and outside the classroom in many EFL contexts. Task-based language teaching, TBLT, offers a principled approach to making language lessons and classes more communicative and meaning-focused because tasks may offer learners compelling reasons to communicate in pairs or in groups. This webinar will explore TBLT by introducing the 4 criteria of tasks, presenting different types of tasks, and sharing specific examples of successful classroom tasks. Using this information, teachers will be able to develop their own tasks that are relevant to their curriculum and their students' interests to encourage authentic language use in the classroom. And now we're pleased to introduce our presenter, Dr. Linh Phung. Originally from Vietnam, Lin is the director of the English Language Program at Chatham University in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and founder and director of EduLing International, which offers English language instruction and services to students from any location. She has published in high-impact journals about task-based language teaching, international student experiences, and learner engagement. Lynn recently published a children's book called Tug of Words and released a free EduLing Speak app to connect learners to talk in pairs using communicative tasks. Professionally, she serves as the current chair of the TESOL International Association's Affiliate Network Professional Council. Welcome, Lynn. We're so happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Kate, and thank you for having me today. I'm very excited to present about promoting authentic language use with tasks to you today. So here's the agenda of today's session. First, we are going to discuss the importance of authentic language use with the focus on oral communication. Then we'll learn about criteria of a task types, and task implementation considerations. I will give a lot of examples throughout the presentation and hope to hear your ideas also. So now let us first take a look at the big picture of English as an international language with an estimate of 1.5 billion English speakers, as you can see in this chart. And you may agree with me that a primary goal of many learners is to communicate internationally as global citizens. However, the speaking skill is difficult to master because of the lack of opportunities to practice speaking in many contexts, especially in the EFL context. Even when teachers like us make great efforts to encourage students to talk in the classroom, they may be unwilling to communicate. In addition, in many situations, there may be too much time spent on controlled practice of linguistic forms with minimal responses from students and too little time on authentic language use, which is essential for developing communicative competence in English learners. Therefore, I think it's important for us teachers to create more opportunities for authentic language use in the classroom. Okay, so what is authentic language use? In a nutshell, it refers to the use of English as a tool for communication and meaning making. And let's take a look at many production activities that we have here on the slide. And you can see that when students are just asked to listen and repeat after the teacher, for example, that is not authentic language use. Or when they are asked to fill in the blanks with the words that are supplied to them, that's not authentic language use either. Even when they do a role play and they may take a role in a conversation and they need to supply some missing information, it is also not very authentic because students are not using language as a tool for communication. Now, if students are asked to describe a picture and the listener has to listen and identify it among the 3 pictures available, then the use of language is more authentic here because learners have to use their own language resources and to communicate ideas here. But you can see that this task is not as authentic as when students have to go to a restaurant and order food at a restaurant. This is the most authentic among the activities that I have here. And you can see that this is a real live communicative task. However, as teachers, it's not always possible to take students to places to engage in real life communicative tasks like this. So in this presentation, I'm going to share with you a framework or many ideas to create what are called pedagogic tasks in the classroom to promote more authentic language use. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, so first, I would like to explain task-based language teaching, or TBLT. And this is a definition that I use from Alice and Chintani in 2014. And Alice, in a webinar that I hosted last year, also talked about this. So TBLT is an approach to language teaching that aims to develop learners' communicative competence by engaging them in meaning-focused communication through the performance of tasks. So as you can see in this approach, teachers don't teach one linguistic form at a time, for example, a word or grammatical rule. Instead, we engage students in performing tasks, and when they perform tasks, we can draw their attention to language forms and address language forms through brief explanations or corrective feedback. Okay, so let's move on. Now, so this brings me to the question of what is a task? And I would like you to keep in mind the example that I gave about ordering food at a restaurant and see how that task fits in with this definition. So a task is an activity in which a person engages to attain an objective and which requires the comprehension and or production of meaningful messages. And as you can see, when we order food, our ultimate objective is to get the food, right? But we need to use language to communicate our ideas to the person taking our order. And that person has to understand our ideas, or in this case, meaningful messages. So this is an example of a real life communicative task. Other examples include talking to schedule a meeting with a colleague or finding a solution to a work problem with a colleague. And as you can see, again, we need to focus on communicating ideas instead of practicing a word or a grammatical form. So these are examples of real life tasks. And in this presentation, I'm gonna share with you how to develop pedagogic tasks for students in the classroom. Okay, so let me stop here and ask you a question. What are other examples of real life communicative tasks?
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you so much for sharing that wonderful definition and explaining it so well. She gave the examples of talking to a colleague to schedule a meeting or finding a solution to a problem. What are some other examples of real life communicative tasks? What do you think? Buying a train ticket from Yulia, great. Asking for a refund at the shop from Irina. Asking for directions in a new town from Libertina. Giving directions from Mayumi, wonderful. Booking a room in a hotel from Karima also. Zaiboom says selling a product, wonderful. Booking a flight or a hotel room from Mireya. Hotel reservations. Building up the confidence of the child to, these build up the confidence of the child to perform better, great. And Pamela says telephone conversations. I think that's very true. It's very authentic to use English when we're calling for something maybe international or calling for something related to tourism. So those are some great examples. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone. Those are great examples. And those real life tasks can form a basis for you to develop classroom tasks. And let me break things down further here by giving you 4 criteria of a task according to Alice 2003. And again, these are for pedagogic tasks in the classroom. And you can see here, I have 4 criteria, but they are not ordered in any order of importance. First, learners' primary focus is on meaning. What it means is that they need to focus on communicating their ideas, right? Instead of practicing a language form. Learners need to use their own resources. These may include language resources and non-linguistic resources as well. Language resources simply means the language that they have. Non-linguistic resources may include gestures to illustrate the action of sleeping, for example. The third criterion here is that there has to be a communicative gap to give learners the reason to communicate. And this communicative gap can be an information gap when learners have different information to exchange, an inference gap, which means that they may have different understandings of a text that they read or something that they listen, and they have a reason to exchange their understanding. An opinion gap is when learners have different opinions to share. And finally, there is a non-linguistic outcome. And again, this criterion is here to make sure that learners have a reason to complete the task. And I gave you an example of ordering food. The objective is to get the food. Or in a picture difference task, the objective can be to find the differences between two pictures. So that is an example of non-linguistic outcome. You can think of it as evidence that students have finished the task, have completed the task. So let me try this task with you here. And this is a storytelling task. You can see 4 pictures on my screen here, and they come from one of my students in a grammar class that I'm teaching this semester. And I teach grammar, but mostly I engage students in reading, listening, writing, and speaking. So this is a storytelling task, and I ask students to think of a story of something that happened to them in real life. And then they have to draw 4 pictures to illustrate the story. After they finish drawing the pictures, they mix them up and they give them to a partner. They need to tell a story so that the partner can rearrange the pictures to illustrate the sequence of the events. So let me try this with you. I'm going to tell a story, and this is my student's story actually. And you're gonna order these pictures into the correct order, okay? So let me read the story here. When I was 6, I was playing with my sister outside. We had so much fun. After a while, I decided to go inside and hide in my grandma's closet. Somehow I fell asleep and slept there for 4 or 5 hours. When I woke up, I went to the living room and found my mom there frightened. She told me that everyone was so worried and looked for me outside for hours. So what is the sequence here? Let's see.
I see a lot of correct answers coming in, I think. A lot of people writing DCAB. Is that correct, Lynn?
Yes, that's the correct order. And as you can see, when I tell the story, it's not my story, but when the student told the story, her focus was getting the story across. And the listener's focus was to understand the story and to arrange the pictures. And there's the task here just to give the listener a stronger reason to even listen to the story and rearrange the pictures. And you can also see the non-linguistic outcome here in the pictures, the rearrangement of the pictures. So this activity meets the 4 criteria of a task. Thank you so much for trying it with me. Okay, so let me take you back to the slide that I showed you before, and let me ask you this question. What is not a task among these examples?
So let's see, we have listen and repeat, fill in the blanks, role play with sentences given and supplying misinformation, describing a picture so that the listener can identify it among the 3 pictures, or ordering food at a restaurant. What activities listed here are not a task? What do you think? And you can also let us know in the chat the reasons. All right, Karima says number 2, fill in the blanks is not a task. Libertina says listen and repeat is not a task. So does Irina. Fokum says fill in the blanks. Joelma says listen and repeat.
Okay.
Let's see. Yep, Sadia says describing a picture is not a task. Great. What do you think, Lynn? How did they do?
Good job. You can see that the first 3 to me are not a task because again, learners focus on practicing language. Even when you have a role play and when you give students a conversation and they have to take a role and they have to put in some missing information, that is still not a task. Mostly they just kind of use the language that is provided to complete an exercise. The first 3 to me are called exercises. So these are actually called exercises, and the last 2 are tasks. And if you use the 4 criteria that I just presented to you, you can see that describing a picture so that the other person can identify it is a task. And the last one is truly a real life task. So I hope that it is clear, but we're gonna try a few more examples in the next slide. Okay, so what about these activities? Can you tell me whether it is a task or not a task? So let's take a look at the first one, having students debate who the best footballer is in groups. Is it a
What do you
task or
think?
not a
Yeah,
task?
let us know, task or not. And you can tell us an explanation too if you want to. I see a lot of people saying task, and I see a lot of people saying, yes, it is a task. So is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, good job. The next one, have students answer would you rather questions in pairs. Would you rather have 5 brothers or 5 sisters? Would you rather live in the sky or in the ocean? Is it a task?
What do you think, everyone? Is this a task? Let's see, James says no, Fokum says no. Karima, I think she's saying yes by writing T. Aliyu says no.
Mm.
What do you think? Aminu says, of course, it's a task. What do you think? What's the answer here on this one, Lynn?
It is a task because there's an opinion gap when people may have different opinions here and they may share their they share their opinions. But I agree it is a little bit weak in the sense that there's no clear non-linguistic outcome. Let's take a look at the next one. Having students tell a story about being scared to a partner.
What do you think, everyone? Do you think having students tell a story about being scared to a partner is a task? Yes or no? And then I see a lot of people saying, yes, it is a task.
Yes.
What do you think? Yeah, is that correct?
Yes, so I can give you the answer, yes. You can consider it a task, but again, if the non-linguistic outcome of these tasks is a little bit clearer, then students will feel more motivated to communicate. But you can see that if students focus on meaning, if they use their own language resources, if there's some gap here, and you can see there's some information gap and opinion gap here. The non-linguistic outcome is a little bit weak here, but maybe you can tweak these and make the outcome a little bit clearer, and they are tasks here. Okay, let's move on. How about this? Is this a task? There's a lot of information on the slide here, so I'm going to read it. This is the material given to students. So Mir is ordering food from a server in a cafeteria. One of you is Mir, one of you is the server. And based on the information you have, make a conversation like this. Could I have plank, please? Here you are. I'm sorry, I don't have it, but I have a plank. Is this a task?
All right, what do you think? Irina says it's a weak one if it is a task. Let's see. Fokum says no. James says nope. We see a lot of people with different ideas about whether this is a task or not. What do you think, everyone? Simona says yes. Kuniko says not a task. Aung says yes, and Aimiva says yes. Many people are saying yes, and many people are saying no. I think we're about 50-50.
I can see that it is still somewhat confusing, but this is not a task because there's no gap, right? Students see the same information. There's no gap here. And also they're gonna focus on just putting one words or one word or one phrase into the plank at a time. The language is provided to them. So this is not a task, but the good news is that if you tweak this a little bit, then you will have a task. So let's look at the next slide. If you tweak this activity a little bit, then you have a task. And let's look at the task materials here. Student A, you are ordering food from a server. This is what you'd like to have. Make a conversation with the server to order your food. Put a tick next to the items that the server doesn't have, something that she cannot order or he cannot order, right? Student B, you are a server taking an order from a customer. This is what you have available. Make a conversation with the customer, take notes of the items the customer ordered, but you don't have. So you can see again here, there's information gap. Two students have different information. They need to communicate their ideas so that the other person can understand them. And they also need to try to understand the other person. Students, learners have to use their own language resources because there are no sentences provided to them to just imitate. And the non-linguistic outcome here includes the tick marks that have to be put on student A's slide and some notes that student B has to take. So this is a task. And you can tweak many activities in textbook to turn them into tasks like this.
Understood. So one quick question, two
Mm-hmm.
quick questions. So the main idea between a task and an activity is the authentic use of language for a real purpose. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that there's usually a gap of some sort. There's something that is not completely structured and filled out for the person, correct?
Yeah. So a gap is when you communicate, you may exchange information. The gap here is the information gap. You have different information or you have different opinions.
Very great. And so fill in the blanks is not a task because there's no information gap. There's no true authentic information missing between the two participants.
And also they don't use their own language resources because the teachers already provide the language there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, let me try another task with you. And let me see here. I have a picture. So I, the presenter, have a picture that you don't see. And you have this picture on the slide. There are some differences between the two pictures. Let me describe, listen to me describing my picture and identify three differences.
Okay, so you have a picture over there that we don't see, right? And so everybody, you can take a look at this picture as you listen to Lynn and think about what she describes and how it's different from what we see because she has a secret picture that we cannot see. Okay, go for it.
Okay. Okay, so I have a picture of a mother and a daughter playing hide and seek. The mother is standing against a big tree. Her head is against the tree trunk. Her eyes are closed. The hands are covering the eyes. Above her on the tree trunk is a blue butterfly. I also see the daughter hiding behind some flowers. I see 5 pink flowers there. Above her is a pink cloud. And then to the left of the daughter, above a pink flower, is a hummingbird hovering above the flower. Okay, so have you found 3 differences?
I think so. I think a lot of people have found some. So there's a white cloud in our picture, but a pink cloud in your picture. Let's see, there's a red butterfly in our picture, but a blue butterfly in yours. I see a lot of people writing that, like Ali, and Siraj says the position of mother and daughter is switched. Yep. And we have a pink butterfly, the other, okay. And you have a hummingbird, but we have a bee.
Wow, okay, good job, everyone. And so let's take a look at 2 pictures in the next slide. So as you can see, the task that I just did with you is a one-way task, and it is perfect for a big classroom because sometimes you cannot put students in pairs, or sometimes it's difficult to do that, but you as a teacher can still do this task with a lot of students at the same time. However, you can turn this into a two-way task, right? Two-way in terms of information flow. When you give one picture to one student and another picture to another student, there are some differences between the pictures. they have to describe their picture. They cannot show their picture to the other person, and then they have to mark the differences on their picture. So this is a two-way task, and you can create these to encourage authentic language use in the classroom. Okay, so let me move on. Now that you know what a task is, and I hope that it is clearer, let's talk about different task types. There are many different ways of categorizing tasks, but I'm going to introduce to you two ways. One is according to the types of communicative gap or the focus of the task, and the other way to categorize tasks is according to discourse types. So now let's take a look at the next slide.
Wonderful. And I want to just quickly interrupt because we have a very nice comment from Regina about how you explain tasks. And she wrote, "Oh, now it makes sense. The tasks promote the use of students' own resources to use in real situations beyond using writing frames to just fill in the blanks." So Regina, thank you so much for that wonderful comment. That was excellent.
Thank you so much. Experts will agree with you. That's the biggest insight there. Okay, so according to communicative gap or the focus of the task, we have information gap tasks. And again, students have different information to exchange. Opinion gap tasks mean that students have different opinions to share, and this is so common in our classroom, right? In decision-making tasks, students have different opinions, but they also need to make a decision. And there are also what are called language-focused tasks. And in these tasks, students have to work with each other to reconstruct a text. So they need to focus on both the content of the text, and they need to also talk about the language to reconstruct sentences in a text. And I will give you an example, and you will see this more clearly when I give you examples. So let's move on. This is a classic example of information gap tasks, and I'm sure you know this. These are jigsaw tasks, right? And you may have jigsaw reading, or you may have jigsaw viewing. And these are the steps that you can follow to create these tasks. So you can choose a text with sections to divide among students, or a video. And I usually choose short videos or even videos without any language. Ask students to read or watch half of the text or the video, and the others to read or watch the other half. Ask students to take notes or give them a graphic organizer for notes so that they can share their ideas later. And then you can ask them to work in pairs to describe their half of the text or the video to their partner. And as you can see, this task involves multiple language skills, but there's an oral component to it. And when students have to work in pairs to share information, their focus is to share information that they have that the partner doesn't have. So again, this is a classic information gap task. Okay, now let me give you an example of a decision-making task. I know there are a lot of words on the slide, but this is the task material that I gave to my students. I used this task before, actually in my dissertation research and in the classroom. So you're proposing 3 activities to the student activities office at your university. Work in a group of 3 to decide on 3 activities to propose. Follow the steps below. Spend 2 minutes to think of 3 activities on your own. Then share your activities with your group. If your activities are the same, think of something new so that students have 9, so that together you have 9 activities to consider. Discuss and decide on 3 activities. So I hope that this is clear, but basically students have different information because they have different activities to share. They may also have different opinions about what activities to propose. So there's an opinion gap there. And when they communicate, they have to use their own language. and the outcome is the decision that they have to make at the end. So this is a task according to TBLT and a decision-making task. So let's move on, and I have a question for you. What types of decisions can you ask students to make in a classroom task?
Yeah, let us know, everybody. Lynn shared a task where students would be deciding on student activities at a university. You have students maybe at a university, maybe you have young learners, maybe you have teenagers. What kind of a decision could your students make for your context, for your school, for your community, for your classroom that could maybe follow Lynn's example here? What do you think, everybody? What kind of decision?
Or they can
Could you-
imagine, right?
Yeah,
They
or you can imagine.
as-
They could choose an activity. I know my students are very passionate about, or used to be very passionate about food. So maybe it's a decision about the school menu for lunch. They could choose a present for someone. What other types of activities could you do with your students? Let's see. You could also have them decide on activities for a certain part of the day, like a certain class. Ooh, deciding on the decoration of the school. Wonderful, from FOCOM. Organizing a trip. They could decide on where to go or how to get there. Wonderful. Suzanne also says the best places for a class trip. Great. For young learners, maybe students could choose the colors to color something in the picture. They can decide which are the best colors for a certain picture. That's a great idea. The dress code, wonderful. That's something students are often very passionate about, is what they need to wear. Deciding on a picnic spot, or deciding what they need to get or what they need to shop for a celebration. Wonderful. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, these are great examples, and I may borrow some of them to turn them into tasks in my classroom. Good job. Let us move on to the next task here, and I hope we have time to try this. So this is a text construction task, and it is called a dictal clause in particular. It is often used to teach grammar, but there is also a oral component to this. And to create a dictal clause, you can follow the steps here. And I know there are a lot of steps, but they are actually pretty simple. The first step is to choose a short text of about maybe 100 words to 150 words. That's what I often do, with interesting content. And I think this is important to have interesting and relevant content. You can do this by taking a passage from your textbook or from any source, or you can write them yourself. And then step 2, read the text at a normal speed for students to take notes. Step 3, read the text at a slower speed for students to take more notes. Step 4, let students share their notes in pairs. Step 5, read the text again at a normal speed. So basically you read the same text 3 times. And then have students reconstruct the text in pairs with as many details as they can. I remind students that it is not a summary, but they don't need to reconstruct the text exactly as the original text. They need to have as many details as they can. And then step 7, give them the original text so they can compare and make corrections. And finally, you can collect their work and give more feedback. So this is something I have done 5 times in my grammar class so far this semester, and I would like to try one with you. So let's move on to the next slide. And please get your note paper and pen ready. I'm going to read a text. You're going to take notes.
All right, I have my note paper and my pen ready, Lynn. I'm ready to go.
Okay. Amira has been studying English at university for a few months. She lives with her husband and her 4-year-old son. She has a college degree in psychology and wants to improve her English so she can study for a master's degree in counseling psychology in America. In her English class, people know her for working hard, having strong opinions, and being funny. When she talks in class, she makes people laugh with her funny stories and creative ideas. One day, she told a story about her dream home on a cliff by the ocean, where giraffes eat leaves from trees inside the house. She ended by saying, "This is my dream home. Don't ask me why." And everyone laughed out loud for minutes. So that's the story about Amira. Let me try again at a normal speed, at a slower speed. Amira has been studying English at university for a few months. She lives with her husband and her 4-year-old son. She has a college degree in psychology and wants to improve her English so she can study for a master's degree in counseling psychology in America. In her English class, people know her for working hard, having strong opinions, and being funny. When she talks in class, she makes people laugh with her funny stories and creative ideas. One day, she told a story about her dream home on a cliff by the ocean, where giraffes eat leaves from trees inside the house. She ended by saying, "This is my dream home. Don't ask me why." And everyone laughed out loud for minutes. Okay, so usually I ask students to work in pairs to share their notes because it can be a little bit overwhelming. And then I read it one more time at a normal speed. So what do you think?
What do you think, everybody? How did that go for you if you were able to grab a pen and a paper? You can see I have some okay notes here, but I could have used one more time, and I'm a native English speaker. So what do you think, everyone? Was it easy? Was it hard? Was it fun? What do you think? Ramona says it's a very interesting idea. Jalilma says it's a wonderful task. Hamid says, I will use this activity in my class. Thanks for sharing. Not hard at all from Joelma. Wow, you are a better listener than I am, I think, because it was a little bit hard for me. Let's see. It was great and funny with you, Lynn and Kate from Strapholegia. Great. Wonderful because you read it twice from Karima. It was fun from Elnar. And it'll be easy to use in my class. Wonderful. Thank you.
If it is not hard at all, then you need to choose something more difficult for your students because you want to push them a little bit along their language development. And also the reason why I read at a normal speed is that so that students focus on meaning at first, focus on the content instead of just taking writing down one word at a time or all of the words. So let's show the original to you. And like I mentioned, in step 7 or step 6 or 7, I give them the original text and they have to compare their text with the original text. The important part is when they work in pairs to reconstruct the text. That is the task or the oral, or there's an oral component there. Okay, so my students was nervous at first. They found it difficult at first, but then they got more comfortable as we did this more in the class. And I'm just so happy with the time spent on this task rather than me explaining grammatical rules, because I can see language development when they talk in pairs. I can see their product. I can also see the corrections when they compare their text with the original. So I just feel that it's a really worthwhile time doing this in class. Okay. Now I'm going to present to you some task types according to discourse types. And discourse basically just means using language beyond a sentence, right? Just saying a sentence. So language used beyond a sentence. And you can also think of discourse as something you would like students to produce, the type of text that you want students to produce. So here I have description tasks. You may ask students to describe pictures, so they may have to describe objects, people, sceneries. You may have instruction tasks. For example, students may need to describe how to make trứng cake, like in this picture, and this is a glutinous rice cake from Vietnam, popular for the Lunar New Year in Vietnam. Students may describe directions or tell directions based on a map, or they may have to talk about how to solve a math problem. In narration tasks, students tell a story. I already gave an example of this. And finally, I have argumentation here. Basically, this involves students in stating their opinion and supporting it with examples and reasons. Okay, so let's move on. Do we have time to try this?
Yes, we might go over a few minutes today because we started a little bit late. So no problem. Yes, let's go through it.
Okay, so I'm giving you an example of what I call picture sequencing task. And here I'm gonna try this with Kate. So I am student A and Kate is student B. And I have two pictures and Kate has two pictures. If we were in the classroom, we wouldn't be able to see our pictures like this. You would have to, students would have to hide their pictures, right? And so we need to describe our pictures so that together we can put them in an order to illustrate how to make tea. Okay, so let's try it. So I'm gonna describe my pictures first, right? Hi, Kate, I have two pictures, pictures A and picture B. In picture A, I see a teapot with some steam coming out from its spout. And in picture B, I also have a teapot, but the lid is open and there's some tea being poured into the pots. What about yours?
Yeah, and my pictures in pictures C and D, I have in picture C, I have a kettle with hot water being poured into the teapot. And in picture D, I have the teapot and it has some tea coming out as it is being poured into a teacup.
Oh, okay. So I think maybe the first step is B, when you put tea in the pot.
That sounds right.
And then the next one, what do you think?
I think probably C because we need to put the hot water in.
Yeah, and then maybe we need to let it stew a little bit. Cool a little bit. So A is the next one.
Yep, and finally D, we get to pour the tea into the cup and enjoy our tea.
Yeah, perfect, we did it. But again, everyone in a real classroom, students would not show their pictures, right? And you can make it more difficult by having more difficult processes for them to describe. So again, here in this task, students have to describe pictures, but they also have to use the kind of language that is typical in giving instruction, right? The first step, the second step. So I want to give this example as a task that involves description and giving instruction. Okay, thank you. Let's move to the question for you. Now that you know what a task is and also have learned about different types, what tasks have you used in your classroom?
Yeah, this has been so informative and we've learned so much about different types of tasks and ideas for that. What types of tasks have you used in your classroom? What are some things that you have done in your class? Let's see. Irina says she's used dictogloss and sequencing the pictures to tell the story. Great. Swaliha says that the picture idea was a great one for students who are quiet. They can work together in a pair. Maybe they feel more confident. Karima has used storytelling. Zubair has used dictogloss. Joelma says that they've described a picture or a process. Information gaps from Irina. Let's see. Maliha has had her students design a book cover. That's great. Odkanaisa says they've had their students design their own dream city. What a nice idea. Sharing recipes or giving instructions. Great, from FOCOM. All right. And a nice
Yeah,
comment from Lara. Thanks a lot. We always learn something new at these webinars. Wonderful.
thank you so much. You have used a lot of tasks. That's impressive, but I hope that this gives you some more ideas of what is possible as well. Make sure students focus on meaning and focus on using their language resources. Okay, let's move on. And finally, this has brought me to the last point in the presentation here. I'm going to talk about some task implementation considerations. So after the students finish the task, there are things that So here, in terms of task implementation considerations, you may need to think about the pre-task stage, how to pair and group students, whether to give students planning time or not, whether students can repeat the same task or not. And also there's some post-task requirements as well. And let's show you some more. Let me explain a little bit more in the next slide. So in the pre-task stage, you can give instructions, right? You can explain the task and give instructions. Students can study the task materials. You may review key vocabulary. For example, in the digital class task, some of you couldn't catch the name, and actually in the classroom, I wrote down the name of Amira on the board first. I also make sure students know these words so that they are not struggling too much when they listen and take notes. So these are some ideas that you can do before students perform the task. And then in the next stage, when you pair or group students, of course, you have to think about who is the speaker, who is the listener, what their roles are, their proficiency levels, and their backgrounds. In my context, I often group or pair students of different proficiency levels and backgrounds together. Next, you may give students planning time or not. And usually when possible, I give students time to plan so that they can use language more fluently and use more complex language. Next, in terms of task repetition, they may repeat the task with a different partner. Right? Don't ask students to repeat something exactly the same. So they may repeat the task with a different partner or with a different amount of time given to them. And task repetition can be helpful for their fluency, for their coherence, and perhaps accuracy. And finally, you may ask students to present the decision to the class after they finish the task. They may submit their task outcome. You may choose to review language to give advice to students on what language is helpful. And you may also ask them to reflect on task performance. Okay, next. And this has brought me to the end of the presentation, in which I have covered the importance of authentic language use, criteria of a task types, task implementation considerations. And finally, next slide. In my final comment, I would like to review some benefits of tasks here. As you can see, when you use tasks, you can encourage more authentic language use. And you can also address language needs as they arise in communication. And when teachers, or when we teach language in context, that is when learners focus on meaning and ideas, there is a better chance that there will be a transfer of students' knowledge and skills to real life context. So this is really the difference between task-based language teaching and other approaches. And apart from using their own language resources and the resources they already have, students can also acquire new language through tasks that involve all skills, but this is for a different presentation. And thank you so much for giving me the chance to present today, and let's reflect.
Yeah, let us know, everyone. Now that you've learned about many considerations, what is something that you would like to try in your next class? Or what would you like to learn more about? Please share your ideas as we close out the session today. Let's see, a lot of people saying thank you so much and wonderful webinar. Let's see, Ramsha says, I can't wait to execute these ideas in my class tomorrow. Wonderful. Has9 says it was an amazing session. One participant says they're going to do the ordering pictures while listening activity. Wonderful. What else? What's an activity you want to use tomorrow or learn more about? Let's see, the really interesting, many people think it was very interesting to understand the real definition of a task. That's great. And storytelling using drawings. Wonderful, everyone. Thanks for your great ideas. And here, Dr. Lynn has shared her references with us. And Dr. Lynn, we just want to say thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. This was great. There are so many great, exciting comments coming in from our audience.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.